across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And as usual, at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. So what we're going to be talking about are these reforms by reform to our benefits system. Now, nobody's going to argue that the benefit system needs reforming, right? I completely agree with that. But do you agree with them that foreign nationals should not be allowed to claim a whole range of benefits, that anybody that was not born in this country, who is living here now, no matter how long they've lived here and no matter how long they've paid tax here, that they should not be entitled to benefits, because that's what reform is talking about. Otherwise, the other things that they're talking about is to make sure that people, it's welfare to work. Now, I have heard this so many times over the decades that I've been doing this job, the idea that people should work in order to claim the benefits that they're on, that they should do mundane, routine jobs that need doing, clearing up a local playground, clearing up, painting walls, doing all of those sorts of jobs. But the problem is there are laws against that kind of thing, and I don't know how you would. I just don't know what it would cost to achieve that, to get, you know, to get people out and working to pay for their benefits. The initial sounding thing, it sounds great, right? That there are people who can be working, who should be working. But a lot of people can't work, and reform says that they will be protected, although PIP in its current form will no longer exist. So are you on benefits? Does this worry you? Are you concerned about what reform is saying here? Or do you agree with it entirely? Do you think absolutely we should be doing whatever it takes, no matter what the cost, biff people off benefits altogether, make sure that only British people can get those benefits, and make sure that people who are fit to work do some kind of work until they get a fully paid job? Either way, I'd love to hear from you, so do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Just a reminder, those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. The rest of the programme looks like this. John Boothman will be joining us from Scotland, political correspondent at the Sunday Times there. We're also going to be talking to Jonathan Taylor about those child sex dolls that are not yet banned in this country. And the most shocking thing, I think, is that people who are found with these dolls suffer no consequences at all. Some of them will go to prison, but that's because they've got other material, including child sexual abuse images. So they will go to jail for that. But if it's just the doll, it's not illegal. So should it be? We're going to be talking about that as well, and looking at the Middle East and what's happening there with Bibi Netanyahu. But before all of that, back to these reforms. A future reform UK government would strip foreign nationals, including EU citizens with settled status, of almost all welfare benefits in a sweeping overhaul aimed at saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. Well, unveiling a 50-page welfare strategy, Shadow Chancellor Robert Jenrick branded the current system economically illiterate and immoral, arguing that British workers should not subsidise foreign citizens. The controversial plan on payments, including housing, disability and child benefits, is projected by the party, to save £21 billion annually within 5 years. However, the radical move would require a complex renegotiation of the Brexit withdrawal agreement, potentially risking the reciprocal rights of British expats living in Europe. I'd love to hear from you if you're an expat living in Europe as well. Do give me a call. Well, the proposals immediately drew a cross-party fire. Labour noted that the vast majority of migrants already lack access to state support, while Conservatives dismissed reform's cost-saving plans as hastily cobbled together. The one thing that reform is brilliant at, though, is getting us talking about them and, of course, getting the whole speech to be played out on television this morning. Well, joining me now to see if this could actually work in the real world is William Yarwood, who's a campaign director at the Taxpayers Alliance. And William joins me now. Good to see you again, William. Thank you for joining me. So, on the face of this sounds like a winner, particularly with the voters, but can it actually work?
Well, good evening, Petrie. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to be on. And yeah, I think we have to just start off by saying we have to give Reform some credit for this, because they're recognizing that welfare spending is spiraling and is significantly too high. I mean, by the end of this decade, the welfare bill overall is going to hit over £400 billion. And I don't know about you, Petrie, I don't have a spare £400 billion down the back of my sofa, which I can give to the state in order to make it affordable. So clearly something has to be done. And we at the TPA have been calling out this for years. We propose reforms to things like universal credit, to PIP, to foreign nationals claiming welfare. And I think Reform is listening to some of these proposals with some level of detail. So let's get into the meat of this. They say that £50 billion will be saved over the course of a parliament. That is a worthwhile level of spending. I remember when Labour did their version of welfare reform, and they were barely going to save £5 billion, £5 billion over the course of the parliament. And of course, they all revolted over it. I think £50 billion is a really, really good start. And I think taxpayers across the country have been crying out for politicians to confront this runaway welfare spending. But you are correct to question whether this is actually going to work, because as we know, welfare reform, not just in Parliament but across the country, is an extremely difficult and extremely emotional topic for many, many, many people, because people feel that they've paid into the system, they feel that they're entitled to it, they feel that, you know, the discussions around it are unfair. And I think that reform, if they are going to do proper welfare reform, as they clearly are, they need to be doing this with a level of caution, but also a level of forthrightness when they believe they've got it right. So let's analyze one or 2 points they say. You talked about the foreign national point. So they say that this is obviously including people who are in the EU resettlement scheme. This is not just including people outside of the EU. They're saying it's going to save about £21 billion over the course of a parliament. Great. Absolutely fine with me. But there is a question about the EU withdrawal agreement. So the argument is that the EU withdrawal agreement basically gives British citizens the reciprocal right to claim welfare in other countries. Now, I might say, I'll be quite radical on this one. Actually, I don't think British citizens abroad should be claiming off French taxpayers, Spanish taxpayers, German taxpayers, and so on and so forth. And therefore, people coming into this country who are foreign nationals claiming off a welfare state should not be allowed to do the same. So I would not be against a renegotiation of that withdrawal agreement. But the devil is in the detail. Reform hasn't explicitly said how they would approach that. And I think that's one thing they need to nail down. On another point, they said they would abolish PIP more broadly. Now, we have called for the means testing of PIP at the TPA for quite a while, because I think it is quite ridiculous, Petrie, that people claiming it for PIP for anxiety, depression, ADHD get the top rate of PIP, and they get the access to the Motability scheme and a variety of other things. I think that is clearly ridiculous and not fair to taxpayers. And they're going to reintegrate it into a new system, which is means tested. Again, that's fine, but there's necessarily going to be bureaucratic costs to that, administrative costs to that, changes to that. Do Reform have the know-how, and also does the civil service have the know-how in order to do that? So I have to give them credit for their forthrightness on this. I have to give them credit for them taking this seriously. But even this 50-page document that they revealed, it doesn't contain quite enough detail yet for me to be satisfied, but I'm willing to listen to what they have to say in the future.
So if we have a foreign national living in this country who has residency but not citizenship yet, they've been here for decades, they've been working, paying tax, paying national insurance, are we really going to turn around to them after decades of paying into the system, say to them, you can't take anything out, when we've got British people who've never paid a day into the system who are able to claim at top rates?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly an unfairness there, but I think that citizenship trumps everything. If you've been in the country for 20, 30 years and you've not bothered to get citizenship, and then later in life you expect to draw things like a state pension. Now, of course, this I would say is a very small part of the population. This is by no means, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people even, but it's a small amount of people. I think in many cases you guys should have got citizenship in the first place if you expected to receive these benefits. And reciprocally, I would have expected Brits abroad to do the exact same thing. I'm not applying double standards to this in any possible way. And I expect reform, and I'm not sure if reform have actually said this or not. I expect reform to apply not to apply double standards there as well. So if they do a renegotiation of the EU withdrawal agreement on this specific issue, they shouldn't say, well, EU nationals should have no access to our welfare state, but British nationals should have access to the French, the German, the Greek, the Spanish welfare states. I think that would be completely wrong to those taxpayers and indeed would be hypocrisy here at home. So I think citizenship trumps everything else because I think fundamentally a welfare state, and I'm not some radical libertarian, I believe in the existence of a welfare state. I believe in the existence of helping people when they're, at their lowest in life or people who need a bit of help to get back into the job market. I believe that the welfare state exists to support British citizens, not exist to support foreign nationals. And if those people who've lived here for many years, who have paid taxes, who've paid national insurance, have not got citizenship, well, I have to be brutally honest, what stops you from getting citizenship in the first place? Because if you've lived here for that long, you are effectively a citizen at that point, and really you should have got a citizenship in the first place. And this, it's not, again, it's not an easy conversation to have, Petrie. It's not a fun conversation to have, but there clearly needs to be something done about this welfare bill. There clearly needs to be something on. Of course, like this EU resettlement scheme, these EU nationals are not the main reason why the growth in the welfare has actually happened.
No.
But I think that getting serious about these issues is extremely important, and I'm very, very glad that reform is beginning these conversations and also getting us talking about it, because many, many years ago this was not even on most of our radars.
What about the welfare to work scheme? Again, on paper it sounds fair, but this has been tried before. It's certainly been talked about over decades, because I've talked about it in various different radio stations, and across many, many years, and nobody has ever managed to get this to actually work.
No, indeed. And again, we're going back to detail here, aren't we, Petrie? Like, there's severe lack of detail. It's all very good and well, and me and you and reform people and whoever it might be to say, oh, well, we believe that people claiming welfare should be made to do 20 hours, 30 hours of community service a week. Everyone will scratch their heads and go, oh, you know what, in principle, that sounds like a good idea. But principles do not necessarily translate into political reality and indeed what is actually possible in the real world. So in principle...
Not to mention the cost of running something like that.
Indeed, because we also don't know the cost of it all, do we, for crying out loud? I mean, there are countries which do this. I mean, America, Iceland, they do have schemes which make sure that welfare claimants who are, looking for work or are able to work are essentially engaging in work search activities, and they're engaging in community service and other things. So it's not completely outside the Everton window. It's not completely unpalatable. But one thing I would say, and I'm not against it in principle, but I would like more detail for reform on this issue, because all I can envision is a group of welfare claimants who perhaps have no desire to work, no interest in it at all, are being micromanaged by a group of local council civil servants made to clean up graffiti and tidy up litter and whatever it might be.
They're going to say no. And then how do you compel it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the precise point, is that how on earth do you compel it in that way? And also, how do you make sure that it's worth the time for the people who actually do it and the people who are actually controlling it? Because many of those local council civil servants there will not want to do it at all. And then do you bring the police in? I mean, are you going to waste police time on that? Are you going to make sure that these people are, collecting litter in the correct way, are doing graffiti in the correct way? So again, the principle is correct. I agree with the principle. But again, Petrie, I'm going back to this again. I want the detail. I want the detail of how this can be implemented, which laws need to be implemented, and indeed which countries we are going to copy if they have done it themselves and they've done it successfully themselves. And also, how are we going to make this the most cost-effective way whereby people are, the communities may improve in this respect, and may their graffiti and the like will be, wiped off the sides, and their, litter will be picked and whatever it might be. But if it is not implemented properly, this will cost taxpayers more in the long run, and indeed cause more animosity between welfare claimants and indeed local council civil servants and the government and many other people who feel that they're being, essentially used as a form of free labour. And again, principles matter here, and I agree with it in principle, but yeah, if there's no detail to any of this, Petrie, it's just simply, nice sounding rhetoric to appeal to reform voters, but little more of anything else.
And a lot of people, of course, who may be in these positions will fight it and say that they're not well enough or they're not fit enough to go and do these jobs. Then again, there's going to be appeals, there's going to be also, this does not come cost-free. We know that. We've seen this with PIP even, and people pushing back on PIP decisions. So you multiply that by several million, it could be a very expensive pastime trying to get somebody who is absolutely convinced they're never going to work a day in their lives to actually get out and do it. Even if they suggest taking their benefits away from them, they will then just turn to, I don't know, burglary, perhaps.
Yeah, indeed. And maybe there's a question of there's some people you can't save. Maybe there's some people in society that are just inevitably always going to be like that. I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have all the answers to those questions. But yeah, I think that if it was done, especially in a relatively harsh way, you could see reaction, not just from the people, engaged in it themselves, but of course from the media, from the political class, from whoever it might be, because they'd see it as being, let's be honest, they see it as being mean, as being cruel, or whatever it might be, and they'll go, oh, well, this is inhuman. We don't do that here. But I do genuinely think that this is achievable because other countries have indeed done it. Again, I cited the United States earlier. I cited Iceland. These are not third world tin pot dictatorship countries which engage in slave labor in any way. These are normal first world countries, with Iceland, of course, being a country which has a very, very generous welfare state and is actually quite a left-wing country in many ways. But again, it's about how it's implemented correctly. What legislation do you pass? How do you pass it? Do you put the obligations on local councils? Do you put the obligations on the Department for Work and Pensions? Do you get the police involved in any way? Does this apply to everybody claiming the new defined benefit that reform will announce and create? Does it apply for people who are long-term sick? Does it apply for people who are just, unemployed for a period of 12 months, which I think is the original proposal? But, people have been unemployed for 12 months for periods of time without any fault of their own and then get back into work again. And look, again, the problem with all of this, because we're not going around in circles per se, because I think this is important to talk about, but again, the issue with reforms policies on this, while I may sit there and agree with them in principle because they're radical, they're cost saving, they're talking about the issues no one else wants to talk about, but then I go a little bit deeper and I find no real detail, no real examples of how this legislation is going to be passed, no real explanation of how they're going to deal with the political costs of this as well. I mean, this is a relatively controversial point to say, but I'll say it anyway. A lot of reform voters, indeed a lot of the constituencies where reform is very dominant, are, quite frankly, full of people who are claiming universal credit, PIP, whatever it might be. And that's a tension that they've just not been willing to address quite yet. That's a tension that they're going to have to deal with if they want to introduce quite wide-ranging and indeed radical welfare reforms if they want to get into government in the future. So again, reform can come out with principles and come out with radical positions and come out with rhetoric, all of which I back, especially in regards to foreign nationals, especially in regards to saving £50 billion, in regards to get rid of PIP, and then of course reintegrating with something else. That's all fine. But if there's no other detail behind it, apart from maybe a handful of, minor policy papers which sort of tinker around the edges, then no one is going to take you seriously. And also no one is going to believe that reform is genuinely going to reform the welfare system. And many people will just think, well, okay, reform is just the same as the Tories, is the same as Labour. They're not going to deal with this system, and the system is going to keep growing and growing and growing. There's
also the time that it will take. Let's see a world where reform wins a majority, they get into power. People will expect this to happen straight away, and it simply can't.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like all politics, isn't it, Petrie? People demand the world and they want it now. I'm reminded of Veruca Salt in the old Charlie and the Chocolate Factory film. I don't care, I want it now. That's I don't care how I want it now. Many people, many of the British public basically expect how politics works that way. It doesn't. It doesn't. Politics works by deliberation. It works by parliamentary procedure. You go through committee stages, you go through reviews, you go through amendments, you go through a variety of things. And something of this magnitude would take a year and a bit to implement. And that's fine. That's fine with me. I have no issue with that at all. But if people listening or watching this program or elsewhere in the country, Reform voters, think that Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick, and the lot are going to come in, click their fingers, and suddenly all of Britain's problems will be solved overnight, that's absolutely for the birds. I mean, I'm sure many Labour voters, Petrie, felt that about Keir Starmer, who remembers him when he first came in 2024, who was just going to click his fingers and every single problem that Tories caused over the last 14 years, which indeed there were very, very many of them, he was just going to click his fingers and solve them overnight. No, governing is hard. Governing is extremely difficult
and
because
slow.
You're not just dealing with voters, you're not just dealing with Parliament, you're dealing with so many different systems and so many different nodes all at once. And I don't think the average member of the public quite appreciates how difficult it is to be a legislative person in that respect, because you're dealing with so many different things all at once while trying to keep everyone happy on side at the same time.
And look how long it took us to get any deals from a Brexit in the first place. If Reform think they can just sort this out overnight, there's going to be a shock coming for them. That could take years.
Yeah, it could take years. I mean, there's a variety of things like the illegal migration, welfare, name a variety, anything that Reform has announced that they do. Yeah. Whether it's, reforming welfare, whether it's sort of dealing with mass legal and illegal migration, whether it's to do with the tax system, whether it's to do with the civil service. These things aren't something you can just click your fingers overnight, because unlike, say, in the United States and indeed other countries, we don't have that quite same executive power as we do in other countries, where they can just sort of like write an executive order and then it's happened. It's done. That's been sorted. President Trump can write an order about abolishing this or removing that, and because it's presidential decree, it's done. And it's over. We don't quite have that in the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister can have a lot of power, especially if he or she has a very, very large parliamentary majority. But even then, as we've seen, again, bringing it back to Keir Starmer when he was in power, bringing it back to him, he had such a large majority. And how much could he really get through?
Yeah, well,
pretty much nothing.
Pretty much nothing, particularly on welfare.
Indeed, particularly on welfare, because he had such a large majority of people who were so against him that they could form blocks and then argue against him. And the welfare reform bill, which of course, as I said earlier, Petrie, was only going to save taxpayers about £5 billion over the course of this decade, because of the organised rebellion that was made from the backbenchers. The welfare reform bill did end up saving £5 billion. It ended up costing about £300 to £500 million, because all the extra parts of welfare savings were removed from the bill, and the only things that were included are things that were going to spend more money on welfare and back to work schemes. So they basically completely gutted it entirely. I mean, that's not a government that's really in power, is it? That's a government held by its backbenchers. So I have to give some caution to Reform on this, especially if many of them, and I know they've lost, from a party political perspective, many people say they've lost momentum a little bit, but if they're still interested in being a majority government, i.e. ruling with a majority in Parliament, they're going to have to deal with many backbenchers who perhaps maybe they agree with them on welfare, on immigration, maybe they agree with them on cultural issues, but they might not quite agree with them on welfare. And they will organise the same kind of rebellions that Labour organised against Starmer and Liz Kendall when she was DWP Secretary. And Reform is going to be scratching their heads and going, well, hang on. I thought if we were in power, it was all going to be all right and we'd solve it all.
It's all going to be different.
It's all going to be different, but unfortunately, political reality will just say no and bite them in the hand.
Yeah, it's never different, William. It's always the same. Thank you very much indeed, William Yarwood, their campaign director at the Taxpayers Alliance. Quick break, back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you. Just a reminder of what's coming up for the rest of the show. In about 15-20 minutes time, we're going to be talking to Jonathan Taylor about these child sex dolls and why they do not have the status of child sexual abuse images in this country and whether they should be completely banned or not. John Boothman joins us at the top of the hour to go through the papers, and of course then at midnight it is your chance to talk back. And I do want to talk to you about these benefit reforms. Do you support what reform is saying? Are you a foreign national? Have you been living in this country for many, many years? Have you paid into a system and now you're being told potentially you'll never get anything out of the system that you've paid into? And how does that make you feel about staying here? Also, the argument that you should be a citizen if you want to be here. Forget paying into the system. If you want anything out of it, you need to be a British citizen. Are you prepared to do that? And what about welfare to work? Have you been on welfare for quite some time? Are you prepared to go out and, I don't know, scrub graffiti off walls in order to get your welfare? And maybe you're somebody who thinks, well, they should, if they can. Get them out there, get them working. But how are we going to make that actually happen? So please do give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and text your messages to 87222. If you put the word talk up front, it comes through to me here in the studio.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie with you. And recent Middle East developments highlight fragile, to say the least, diplomatic efforts on two fronts. Regarding the Gaza conflict, President Trump's envoy, Jared Kushner, has been holding critical meetings, including with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in an effort to advance a ceasefire and secure a regional peace roadmap. Meanwhile, the 60-day Memorandum of Understanding between the US and Iran has officially expired. However, Abbas Bakapour, Iran's Director General of Legal Affairs, suggested the agreement can still be saved. He clarified that despite repeated violations, the deal is not dead, but rather in a coma from which it could be revived. Donald Trump has also claimed to have back-channel conversations with the IRGC. They have said no such thing is actually happening, that Trump isn't talking to them at all. And meanwhile, Donald Trump has also said, and forgive this language, but I am quoting the president directly, and the reason I wanted to use this word is because I wanted you to hear exactly what Donald Trump said. He said that if Oman gets in the way, that America is going to bomb the shit out of them. Diplomatic or not? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Petrie Hosken, author and distinguished university professor at Ohio State University. He's authored several books on US diplomacy and the Middle East. Peter, good to speak to you again. Thank you for joining me. Not incredibly diplomatic or helpful language, I would suggest, from Donald Trump right now.
Yes, Petrie, thank you for having me on again. I would agree that Donald Trump's language, as you just quoted it, was not diplomatic. Helpful, probably not. Whether it's effective, I guess, remains to be seen. If that kind of coarse barnyard talk gets Oman to do what he wants, then his Trump's backers will say that he used the appropriate amount of diplomatic leverage through his coarse language. But that remains to be seen. That kind of language from President Trump is not unusual. He is well known to use it in his private conversations. He occasionally uses it in his public conversations. It's part of the overall persona he seeks to cultivate as a tough as nails kind of leader.
Oman is an ally of the US, right?
It's not formally an ally, but it has strategic interests that align with the U.S. It has been caught in a hard place, though, where because it shares maritime interests with Iran, it has tried to be some kind of a go-between, and it has thus occasionally taken steps that seem to be supportive of Iran's efforts, and that's why President Trump currently has the country in his gun sights.
Just for a moment, imagine this isn't bluff from Donald Trump and he were to follow through with bombing Oman. What would that do to the Middle East? How would the other Middle Eastern countries see this?
Yeah, I see that as a highly unlikely scenario. I think it is a bluff from President Trump. I think he was probably just venting frustration, trying to make a point to get everyone's attention. He's accomplished that. If he were to carry it through, which again I think is unlikely, it would destabilize things even further because it would be an attack on an Arab power. And that's much different than an attack on the Persian power he has previously conducted. It would perhaps drive disunion and second guessing through other Arab powers as well, who might naturally fear that if they did something to get in the president's bad graces, they could be next.
And what about Donald Trump also declaring more than once that he wants to make the Strait of Hormuz American territory?
Yeah, I think that's hyperbole, which is also a characteristic signature trademark of President Trump. He often says things that are provocative, if not outrageous, simply because that's his style. He likes to rile things up. He likes to draw attention to himself. He believes that even bad attention, even critical attention, is a net positive for his overall PR strategy. So he's well documented as having numerous times said outrageous things just to provoke and stimulate conversation, draw attention to himself. It's very clear, and he's succeeded in that to a certain degree in the statement about making the Strait of Hormuz American property. He's got us talking about it. He's got his critics fired up. He's got the usual
to be clear, he has to be clear, he has absolutely no right to that territory.
Well, under international law, that is true. He does not. Conquest and annexation forced and upon a country by one of its foreign community members is a violation of law. The UN and other international laws make very clear that such a thing would be illegal. Could he do it anyhow? Of course he could do it anyhow, although it's hard to fathom the logistics of establishing sovereignty over that strait and then being able to manage and maintain it effectively for the foreseeable future. That's why I think his claim that he's contemplating this is probably just so much hyperbole to stir things up. There are numerous cases in which the president says something like that, he ruffles some feathers, he riles discussion for a few days, and within a week it's a long ago forgotten relic of his governing style.
But how does that help anything? I mean, you know, you would like to imagine that what Donald Trump should want is a Strait of Hormuz open with as little fuss as possible, considering it was open before he started with Israel to bomb Iran. And you'd think he'd want diplomacy, particularly getting this close to the midterms, to proceed over threats and silly comments. I don't know. I mean, I get that he likes to be the centre of attention, but I don't get what he gets out of this, except for embarrassment on the world stage when it doesn't happen.
I imagine in his mind he's thinking that this type of bravado gives him a bully image that might cow his foreign adversaries or force them to give him some begrudging respect, or maybe make them worry for a few moments in the dead of night that he's coming for them in some way. It certainly enhances his own persona, his own sense of ego and self. He believes it puffs up his own reputation. It does get him in the spotlight again for another moment.
But he's accused of tacoing, and he doesn't like that because he makes these statements, he makes these big promises, these big things that he's going to do, and then doesn't do them. And that I don't see why he can't join those two things together.
Yeah, well, it certainly costs him his credibility. He's the proverbial boy who cried wolf, in the sense that no one believes anything he says anymore. And that makes it hard for him when he's being serious and saying something he really believes in. It makes it hard for him to persuade people to take him seriously. So that's certainly a cost that his style of diplomacy has to bear as well.
Well, let's have a look at Israel now and what's going on there. Benjamin Netanyahu has already said that he's not accepting this deal that's been put forward by the Board of Peace. Jared Kushner is apparently out there telling him to toe the line and to do as he's told. But he's got his own elections coming up, hasn't he, at the end of October. He's unlikely to agree to anything that makes him look weak.
Yeah, I think that's true. Netanyahu certainly prides himself on being a strong, militant, assertive leader of the Israeli people, especially in dealing with Hamas, who, you know, are widely despised among the Israeli people. So he can't give an inch. He and Hamas were encouraged by the U.S. initiated peace plan. The U.S. first floated the idea in October of 2025. The Board of Peace, which is a concoction of Donald Trump, echoed the call in February of this year. And the plan basically says that Israel and Hamas have to each take steps toward making peace. Israel has to agree to end its war in Gaza and withdraw its occupation forces. Hamas has to agree to disarm entirely and fully and stop all forms of violence against the Israeli people and government. In principle, it's relatively easy for the two powers to agree to that, but where it comes, where the situation becomes difficult is who goes first. When you have two powers or two entities that so deeply and profoundly mistrust each other, they do not have the confidence to make any concession until the other guy makes all the concessions. So Israel has said it's not going to leave Gaza until Hamas first disarms. And Hamas, of course, has said, well, we're not going to disarm unless Israel first evacuates Gaza. An astute diplomat trying to work that toward agreement would probably try to figure out some incremental approach. You withdraw a little bit, you disarm a little bit, build some confidence in each other along the way, and gradually over time, maybe you can work out some kind of deal. The Kushner mission today in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, apparently did not persuade Netanyahu on any kind of incremental approach. At least I have not seen that in any of the other reports.
But
Also,
again, Donald
quite
Trump wants
unlikely
this. Donald Trump wants this done quickly so he can talk about it in the midterms, right?
Yes, it would certainly be in Donald Trump's domestic political interests to have the Middle East calm well in advance of the midterm election day. Probably having the Iran situation figured out is considered more important to Trump than the Israeli-Hamas dispute figured out. The Iran issue is, by my estimation, garnering more attention among the American electorate, if only because it's having domestic repercussions reflected in the price of petroleum, which average American citizens think about all the time because they're fueling their vehicles and because they're seeing the impact of higher fuel costs in general inflation at the grocery store and the hardware store. Where the Israel-Gaza situation does not have a direct effect on the quality of life of Americans, at least not certainly to the same degree.
With Bibi Netanyahu, though, he's kind of stuck, isn't he, between the hard right, politically speaking, in Israel, and the slightly left of him. I won't say they're left, slightly left of where he stands, and he cannot please both, can he, at this point?
No, he can't. And when he first built his coalition 5 or 8 years ago, he seemed to move from being a centrist himself into this partnership with the ultra-right, which required him to become a bit more hard-edged in dealing with all Palestinian-related questions. I think since the onset of the Gaza war, the recent war in October of 2023, Netanyahu himself has moved to the hard right, as evident in his policies and practices as well as in his declarations. So I'm not sure he cares much about the center or the left. He certainly is not in any alignment with the left as he might have been 20 years ago. And I think the center has evaporated. I also think, from what I can see in public opinion polling and other expressions of thinking among the Israeli people, there is still a pretty strongly worded and felt anti-Hamas, anti-Palestinian bias right now because of the traumatic emotional impact of the attack on Israel by Hamas in October 2023. So there is not a silent majority in opposition to Netanyahu. The majority of the Israeli people actually favor his hawkish approach toward all Palestinian questions.
But they may be tempted to go further to the right. That's the concern for Benjamin Netanyahu, isn't it? I mean, we could be looking at a very different world after the midterms and the Israeli election.
Well, we could indeed. I mean, there will be an opposition candidate to Netanyahu who, presumably, if he wins, could direct the country in a very different path. Possibly contemplating some kind of a compromise or incremental approach. That person, if coming in with a fresh slate, would have opportunity to at least contemplate going where Netanyahu seemingly is unwilling to go today. On the U.S. side, if, the midterm election should, say, return a Democratic majority in either the House or the Senate, that could be instrumental in beginning to put some leashes on what President Trump is doing or has been able to do with what has been so far a very complacent and complicit Republican majority on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, a few months' time we'll know. Peter, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Peter Hahn there, author and distinguished university professor at Ohio State University, authoring several books on the US diplomacy and the Middle East. Quick break, back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Just a quick reminder that John Boothman will be joining us at the top of the hour to go through tomorrow's newspapers for you. In the meantime, despite international trends, child sex dolls remain legal in the UK, sparking growing concern amongst child protection advocates and lawmakers. We talked about this in February, if you remember. We were talking about the Shein website selling these ultra-realistic child sex dolls. And I know many of you were entirely shocked and appalled by some of the images that you saw. Well, while countries like the United States and Australia have moved to outlaw these hyper-realistic life-size dolls, citing their potential to normalise predatory behaviour, the UK lacks specific legislation prohibiting their possession. Campaigners, spearheaded by Lib Dem MP, are now intensifying pressure on the government to close this glaring legal loophole, arguing that banning the dolls is a crucial step towards safeguarding children and preventing future abuse incidents. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Jonathan Taylor, who's a child safeguarding consultant and a former Met detective specialising in child abuse investigations. Nice to meet you, John. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I remember talking about this, John. I was just saying back in February when it was disclosed that a website that largely sells fashion, I believe, Shein, was selling through their marketplace these very realistic, very disturbing child sex dolls with various comments underneath from people who had purchased them, and there was great uproar about this. But they're still not illegal to own in this country. They still come with them with no repercussions either if you own these dolls.
That's unfortunately correct, Petrie. Yes, I'm sure this bill will go through, second reading in September. But yes, it's not illegal to own, I mean, I hate the phrase child sex doll, it just doesn't sit with me at all well. But of course, it is part of being an indecent, obscene article. Unfortunately, I've been away from the force for 15 years, having done 30 years, but I can tell you now, in the late 90s into the early 2000s, this was something that was happening then. This is not new. This isn't something that's happened in the last sort of 9 or 10 years. Child sex offenders would create their own dolls, if you were. But then, of course, we knew in the early 2000s that it was very easy to import them then from Asia, Southeast Asia, and then even the United States itself. So it's very easy to order or get one. And of course, what's happened now with the likes of Shein and other online shopping areas, you can buy them very easily. It is horrendous, but it is all part of that child sex offender methodology because it's about access and opportunity to a child. If they don't have it, well, now they can buy one. And these are very anatomically accurate, even to the extent of warming them up and actually getting movement. These are not at all nice things to be able to order and buy.
I was just going to say that these are, people have no illusions that these are just dolls. These are designed for men to have sex with them, and they are anatomically designed to look just like little girls. I just have to also say that Shein have subsequent to that piece in February, have removed all of those objects from their website, and they are across now making sure that nobody can sell any more on that website, because these are independent retailers that sell through the website, but they're across it now. But still, the thing that horrified me, Jonathan, was that these men, largely men, who are found with these largely female sex dolls, child sex dolls, they don't even go on the sex register, abuse register. There's nothing happens to them. It's not considered to be anything akin to having child sexual abuse images, for example.
That's correct. I mean, if you go back to 2000, but if you go back to 2017, when this was first brought, in many ways, to the attention, there was an operation then, and seven men, as you quite rightly there, Petrie, seven were arrested, six of which had horrendous child sexual material on their computers. This will, unfortunately, from my point of view, from where I worked, anybody involved in trying to buy or get hold of one of these dolls, I could virtually guarantee that on their devices will be indecent images of children.
Yeah.
That's their methodology. That's what they want. They're forever wanting to see these images. Why? Because they want to access and actually abuse a child in real life. And this is like a stepping stone, if you like. They see an image, they can now have that stepping stone to a child's sex doll, to use the phrase that's been used. And of course, the next step is actually to be what's called we call a hands-on abuser, if they've got the access and opportunity to a child. If they haven't, even worse still, you're then talking about abduction, etc.
So some people might be thinking that they prevent paedophiles from abusing actual real children, that if they've got this thing that they can use, that will satisfy them somehow, and that will prevent actual harm. What is your argument to that?
That doesn't sit with me either. I speak to many schools. I do lectures, and that's also been an argument put forward for AI and deep fake images. Perhaps this might protect children because that'll be suffice. It's not. The outcome for every child sex offender, and there'll be people out there who will probably say it's not right. But from my experience, having had 20 years in this area and now 15 years as a researcher, from my experience, it's all about access and opportunity to a real child to abuse, a real child to rape. This is just a cycle. This is a stepping stone for them to get closer and closer access. And if there is access, there will be a child who will be exploited and sexually abused.
Why is this so prevalent seemingly in the UK? We're one of the biggest purchasers of child sexual abuse images in the world. You know, paedophilia, it seems to be rampant when you look at things like this going on. Why?
Without a doubt. I mean, for many years, I've always talked about with the internet and the way the internet's been used for images, it's an epidemic. You know, it's not difficult to see sexualized images of children, whether that's on social media or even going into the dark web. They're very, very easy to get hold of. So I get the question also, has the internet and if you like, technology created more offenders? Possibly yes, but what it's done, it's facilitated. So whether or not that we've been the lead in that area because we've been the first to actually embrace the likes of technology, that could be where we are now. But it's one of these things, Petrie, where you'll see a lot of academics, and there's lots of things to read within academia that will say 1 in every 4. So that's 25%, whether you're in the UK or not. And that's just not from my research, that's from other people's. So
1 in every 4 men is a paedophile.
Yeah, well, and will certainly have that wanton desire to actually abuse a child, and that's the feelings. And when you look at those sort of figures, if that 25% all acted on their urges, then yeah, that's you can imagine. So it's something that when I go and do lecturing and I speak to people, they're sort of quite horrified. But I could tell you now, Petrie, you can go anywhere now to a chat room now, and there will be sex offenders in there. And these ones will be dedicated to the UK. So it's very hard to say why the UK. There are many reasons you could put out there, but actually this is a worldwide epidemic, and we did many operations where we could identify internet protocol numbers for people offenders, and it was worldwide. It's not something that's sort of, and you know, you can see it. It's something that the government should take more seriously. There should be more legislation. I'm sure this bill will go through, but there should be a lot more done, because the big argument at the moment is whether the legislation is keeping pace with technology. And the answer to that is no, we're not.
Do you see that these dolls will be banned?
They will be banned, but they won't stop coming in. It's not difficult because the thing about offending on the internet, let's call it that, whether that's to do with drugs, whether that's to do with any form of crime, and here as well, you can go within 3, 4, 5 clicks into the dark web and have these ordered and dropped off tomorrow by the postman. This isn't something that is going to stop it. Legislation gives, if you like, a bit of bite, a bit of power to the authorities, whether that's Border Force or whether that's going to be the NCA. They've suddenly got a bit more power rather than just charge somebody for the likes of having the article. Let's actually charge them for what this is.
Yeah.
This is a child sex offender, despite the fact it's a doll. And I agree with you. Legislation should go further and say you will be put on the sex offender register.
Absolutely, without question. I think it's a no-brainer to me.
Exactly.
Jonathan, great to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Jonathan Taylor there, child safeguarding consultant and former Met detective. 1 in 4. That is horrendous. Anyway, coming up, we're going to be looking at, a bit shocked by that, we're going to be looking at the papers with the fabulous John Boothman, so don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie. And don't forget, coming up in an hour's time, it is your chance to talk back. And I want to hear from you about the reforms, plans for welfare. Do you think that what they're suggesting, at least, does make it fairer for us all? And that is, unless you are a British citizen, you do not get access to welfare, to most welfare. I think the exceptions are a war widow's pension and one other, a veteran's pension, I think. Those are the only exceptions. But anything else, even if you've paid into the system for years and years, you do not get anything out of it. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's right and fair? If you are a foreign national who's living in this country and you've been paying into the system for many years, as many of our European cousins have been doing so, do you think that this is fair and reasonable, and you would expect your country to pay you your any I don't know, welfare that you might need if ever you became ill, or if you couldn't work any longer? Do you think that you should perhaps return to the country that you came from to claim, rather than claim it here? The other question is about welfare to work. If you are on benefits at the moment, how do you feel about the idea of being made to go out and, I don't know, scrub graffiti off walls, go and clean a children's playground, or pick up litter on the streets? Do you think that that is the right thing to do, that it is only fair that if you get this welfare, after 12 months of being on benefits, if you are fit and able, that you go out and earn your welfare? Some would argue that they've been paying into the system for many years of work and therefore have already earned their welfare. But that is not what reform is saying. Reform is saying after 12 months, if you're fit to work and you haven't got a job, you will be put to work in some task or other that the local council determines is what you should do. So that's what I'm asking you today. Putting aside whether any of these plans are actually workable or affordable, at this stage, we haven't seen much policy detail, even in the 50 pages of their plans. There wasn't much detail in this. And also how long it would possibly take. But if you're on PIP, if you're on benefits, are you concerned? Are you worried about what reform is saying that they will do to welfare? If you're a taxpayer, maybe you're thinking, well, this is great. 50 billion saved over the period of a parliament. 5 years, 50 billion saved. Great. We need more of that thinking and less of Labour thinking, which can't push through any changes to welfare at all. So do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at a national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. I look forward to hearing from you. Now, though, I'm delighted to say that I am joined by the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, good to see you.
How are you doing?
Good, I'm really well. It's a fine haircut you've got there. Have you just had it done?
As my wife said to me when I get back, it'll be nice when it's finished. But there you go.
I think it looks very dapper, John.
Look, it's the summer here, although, I mean, it's been raining here all day. Do you remember that stuff?
We don't remember that.
It's wet.
We don't remember that down here. We haven't seen it for a long, long time. Apparently we will at the end of the week, so we're told. John, looking at those plans by Reform, and they are sketched out plans, it has to be said. There's no meat to the sandwich as yet. What do you think of them?
I think the first thing that struck me about them was that I found it faintly amusing that that Reform were proposing to rip apart the Brexit deal. Yeah. Because a lot of this stuff was what we agreed when we withdrew from the European community, that, you know, people who were EU citizens who had settled status would get welfare benefits. It's like a lot of stuff I hear from Reform, and, you know, I don't want to go too overboard on this, but, you know, these things are easier said than done. I think it's right that people should be looking at welfare. We've clearly got a gigantic explosion of welfare benefits in this country. You're absolutely right to say that Labour, particularly because of rebellions in the backbenches, were not able, or at least so far have not been able, to do anything much about that. In Scotland, the SNP don't want to do anything much about it, to be fair as well. A lot of these things that we have in this country are legacies of the Conservative government. So in that respect, you know, Reform, like some others, are right to say that these things need to be looked at. However, if anybody really thinks in reality that you could, you know, at one fell swoop, right, take 50 billion quid out of the welfare system, I just don't see that being very practical. And again, you know, dare I say this, you know, the target of this being people from abroad who've settled here, who've paid their taxes here, who run businesses here, that these people would not be given welfare, just seems to me to be bizarre.
Well, I mean, I just don't know how you square that circle. I don't know how you require somebody to pay into the national insurance policy and into the tax system and then tell them that they get nothing back for that.
Well, you know, are we all to look forward, you know, in future to a whole load of British citizens, for example, who live in Spain being refused anything that they get there, that any time they need an operation, they've just to come back and use the system, even though they haven't been paying taxes here? I think there's, as you say, this is probably quite sketchy from Reform. It needs a lot more thinking. But
it will undoubtedly be popular. I mean, this is an interesting. I was talking to the Taxpayers Alliance earlier, and he said, so I'm quoting him, that it is an interesting political decision by Reform, considering that a lot of the Reform backers come from the very poorest communities for whom welfare is a lifeline. And the idea of doing something that would be politically unpopular, in other words, the welfare to work schemes, which have been talked about for decades. You and I both know that. They've never quite pulled it off. Nobody has. But I wonder how popular it'll be with the Reform base.
Well, you know, if you think that Reform is picking up a lot of working class voters, a lot of people, for example, as you say, right, who, you know, are on what people might term, you know, the lower social classifications, or C's and D's in old-fashioned terms that we talk about. You know, I saw some statistics earlier from Nigel Farage's and Richard Tice's constituency about how many people are on welfare. And, you know, these people might be out there supporting Reform at the moment, but once they see the details of this plans, they might think differently.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea from Reform. But look, the one thing Reform is really good at is getting us talking about them, getting us talking. You know, that whole speech by Jenrick was shown on the television this morning. I watched it. You know, you don't see other parties getting that kind of attention, so they're good at getting attention.
Alex Salmond used to say, and it always stuck in my head, there's only one thing worse than politics than people talking about you, and that's people not talking about you.
Yeah, I think that's very true. So that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. Do give me a call. Do you think, in principle, that Nigel Farage has got this right? 0344 499 1000. Now though, John, let's turn our attention to the front pages, and the Times for tomorrow says that a tweak to early release scheme could keep PC's killers in prison.
I think this is a really interesting story. It's clearly something that has really been seized by the Prime Minister. It's clearly rattled Andy Burnham. He, you know, suspended the early release scheme earlier in the summer. He was concerned about people who were in prison for rape. This whole situation was then highlighted about the killers of Andrew Harper. I saw, very movingly, Andrew Harper's mother, I think, on television last week, talking about this. The Prime Minister's clearly said, I want something done about this. There seems to be something technical, according to the Times. It says that the government is looking at exempting all those who committed unlawful act manslaughter from the scheme, which would mean that 470 people who are serving sentences for manslaughter and are eligible to be freed. But those who committed other forms of manslaughter, such as gross negligence or voluntary manslaughter, would still be released under the plan. So a particular categorization, classification of manslaughter, those people wouldn't be released, but others who committed manslaughter would still remain in jail.
I mean, look, that will solve the PC Harper situation, right? But it's not going to solve the problem that he's got with this, because this is just whack-a-mole. You know, there'll be after the PC Harper case, there'll be somebody else who says, yes, but my dad's killer's been let out, my son's killer's been let out. Then there'll be somebody else who's let out that commits a, you know, he's opened a massive can of worms here.
I mean, I find this quite interesting. We are, I think, on our 4th tranche of early releases in Scotland over the past couple of years. The same issue on a slightly smaller, well, a smaller scale. The prisons are overcrowded. So basically what happens is people are getting out earlier. There's a problem in the prisons with a larger number of remand prisoners because of blockages and difficulties getting them through the courts. Yeah. There's more and more prisoners who are elderly, who've been serving very, very long sentences, who are in prisons. Prisons are very different places from where they were in the past, but the big problem is that issue of prison places. We've spoken about this before. You know, we're building a prison in Glasgow at more than £1 billion at Barlinnie. And on the one hand, whilst people would say these people should be kept in jail, when you find out how much it costs to keep them in jail and to build jails, then people start to go, what, really?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the prison population, there's something like 1,000 people over the age of 80 or something that you have to suggest perhaps they're not a great danger to the public, maybe in their 80s and 90s, and they're not making the decisions to release them or put them in an open jail or something.
Look, again, you know, you're back to this issue. It depends what people are in jail for. But, you know, you made that point earlier on about, you know, I'm opening a can of worms. I think the latest situation that looks as if it will arise in this tranche of releases, and I saw people again on television talking about this last week, is people who are victims of domestic violence are really, really worried that, you know, some of the people who are going to be released early and very early are people who, you know, violently abused their partners. And you can understand perfectly why there would be an issue. And, you know, the government can say as much as they like that the probation service will put things in place, there will be additional security and tagging and greater monitoring. And the government has said that, but there's a bit of, you know, the public being quite sceptical about that as well.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of trust in the probation system because they're overworked and understaffed. And also we've seen too many stories about these companies, these private companies that are responsible for tagging prisoners on release, not doing so. And not monitoring them. So it's for very good reason that we're sceptical about any backup plan. And the police have also said, look, we're going to be so busy managing these people that we're not going to be able to stop crimes happening and other criminals appearing. So it seems like, I don't know it's just pushing it down the road, right?
Yeah, we've also got this very strange situation that anything I see or read about this keeps telling us we've got the highest prison population in Western Europe. Now, I don't know the answer to this question, but, you know, what that appears to mean is that fewer people are being put in jail in other countries, presumably we're putting people in jail, you know, still for maybe crimes, minor crimes that they shouldn't be in jail for. Or somehow or other, they are better in other countries at devising, implementing, delivering community sentences of some description. So they've got better support in communities or in the probation service or whatever that allows people with certain categories of crime not to be in the jails. And again, as I've said, if we could improve substantially, and this is something that happened, I think, or certainly was hugely exacerbated in the back end of COVID, the number of people who are in jail on remand by getting people through the courts quicker, somehow or other we might be able to improve things.
Yeah, absolutely. John, thank you. We're going to take a quick break, but John and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. With me is the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Sticking with the front page of the Times, John, children left fixated with violence by social media. The British children are becoming intoxicated by extremism, the Children's Commissioner for England has warned, as she called on the government to introduce a range of restrictions on social media use for under 18s. I thought that was already in the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, nevertheless, it's an interesting story, and the language that has been used by the Children's Commissioner is certainly pretty strong stuff.
Yeah.
Children who repeatedly talked about weapons, idolised violent attackers, or shared videos of beheading and suicides were routinely falling outside counter-terrorism measures, she says, and then goes on to say that lots of children are being drawn into radicalisation and violence fascination. It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is, but haven't we always... There's always been something that has drawn children into that. In our day, it was music, right? We were told this music is radicalising children, it's turning them violent. Then it was games, video games and films, and now it's social media. Isn't this something that has always happened to a degree, or always at least there's been something to blame for it?
I don't know. I mean, I think the media, the social media, the internet is just so all-pervasive. It's there, it's too easy, it's too convenient. A few clicks and you can see all this stuff.
Yeah,
people
true.
can do it in the privacy of their own rooms. There is no real monitoring, policing, or anything of this that stops any kid at any age accessing it, as long as they've got thumbs and the ability to switch on a phone.
Yeah.
It doesn't contradict this, but if you talk to young people about it, they don't want to see social media. I think by and large for them as individuals, they might turn around and say other kids of their age should see it. But
yeah,
there's still a big problem with this. And what I find quite interesting about it more generally is that there are simple things that could have happened in Britain and happened in other countries in the past few years really quite easily, like banning mobile phones in schools, right? And we just can't even get our act together to do that. And now, we're talking about this idea of banning social media for under 16s, under 18s, whatever it might be. And no one has been able to really haul over the coals, get them to take some accountability for this stuff amongst the tech companies, who are the people who should really be doing something about it.
Absolutely.
You know, there needs to be much more pressure on the tech companies to do something about this, to introduce some kind of safeguards, some kind of,
well, they're the experts, right? They know how these algorithms work. They invented them, so they know how to stop them.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you know, for all of the well-intentions that governments have, you know, we've been very, very slow. We've been how long we've been talking about this?
Since the beginning of time, it feels like it, and nothing has been done. You're absolutely right. Let's have a look at the Telegraph. Angela Rayner paves way for more traveller sites. Residents will be forced to tolerate lawbreakers as reforms will hinder councils from blocking new camps. Angela Rayner softened planning rules for traveller sites, giving councils fewer ways to block them. This won't be popular.
No, this will cause outrage in a whole load of places. It also goes on to talk about the exponential increase in the number of people who are travelling around the country, which I think is quite interesting. What the article doesn't explain in any kind of shape or form is why she is doing this. Which, again, I find quite interesting. You know, it's a relaxation of the planning laws. This is what it will mean. Presumably, there are fewer travelling sites, or because local communities don't want them, maybe the government thinks that, you know, it's a good idea, this should happen, that if it doesn't happen, people's human rights or something are being transgressed. I don't really know, because other than the headline and what's in the body of the piece, it doesn't say why Angela Rayner's gone down this direction of travel.
No, it really doesn't. And it doesn't talk about any illegality of just taking a piece of land. I don't think you or I would be able to do that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, look, there are organised sites round about the country, but, you know, what tends to happen is, you know, groups of these people, right, just appear with their vehicles. You know, sometimes overnight. I've seen it quite
cement
recently,
over a complete,
not far to where we live. And, you know, they're there for weeks and there's a mess and everything else. Local communities don't like it. But part of that is because I think in general there's a reluctance among local authorities to have organised sites and the like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's also paved the way for more development of a green belt. So any town or city that's got a green belt around it, she's also paved the way for more building on that as well. Burnham to block water firms using surge pricing during drought. I mean, what more are these water companies going to do to us? This is absolutely disgusting.
Well, you know, we don't have this problem in Scotland. You know, Scottish Water is publicly owned in Scotland. Water is cheaper in Scotland. Mind you, it's more plentiful, it has to be said.
It is true.
But there you go. Look, you know, I think anything the Prime Minister says about, or does more particularly about water companies in England, right, will be popular.
Yeah.
I mean, people have just got such a dislike, a distaste, an antipathy towards water companies. I think the difficulty for the government in respect of all of this is that, and again, Burnham's talking about this, he's talking about, you know, control of water authorities in England. If he were going to do that and try and buy these companies out or whatever, it would cost an absolute arm and a leg to do it. So it will be interesting to see where he goes in all of this and what he can do to further, I suspect, regulate these companies rather than anything else.
Well, I mean, and any drought, I'm afraid, is down to these water companies. These water companies are allowing millions, if not billions, of litres of water to spill out of pipes every single day across the country, and they've not built any reservoirs. So it's their fault. And then they've got the nerve to want to charge us more for water during droughts, which they are responsible for happening. I mean, they're not responsible for the weather, but they are responsible for everything else.
That's been one of the major criticisms. There's been a lack of investment in infrastructure, and at the same time, these same companies seem to be able to pay their shareholders lots and lots of dividends, pay their executive huge amounts of money and bonuses in terms of their salaries, but yet the basic infrastructure, whether it be, you know, the provision of reservoirs, whether it be being able to curb sewage and difficulties with the environment, all seems, you know, well, I don't know whether it's ignored, but certainly the sort of work and the sort of effort and the sort of resources that need to go into this just doesn't seem to happen. They're just taking the absolute proverbial, I tell you. Let's have a look at the Mirror. Wine buffoon is the headlines. Nigel Farage's #2 trivialised the deadly heat waves yesterday, saying if it means English wine and sparkling wine gets better, fantastic. This is Richard Tice was branded out of touch by environmental experts. He spoke after an estimated 2,700 heat-related deaths in May and June and wildfires destroyed homes in the West Midlands, visited by the Housing Secretary Angela Rayner. I mean, you know, sorry, I've already been relatively disparaging about reform, but you know, this is a bit beyond the pale. You know, 2,877 excess deaths, mostly elderly people. Yeah. Stourbridge houses inflamed, 19 houses destroyed, another 18 houses partially damaged. You know, every time I turn on the radio, I hear about what's happening in the agricultural community for farmers. I see the pictures of brown fields. The harvest is failing. The next thing that's coming down the road is there will be huge increases in the price of vegetables. But Richard Tice, it's all fine. We've all to be happy because English sparkling wine will be cheap. It is quite out of touch, isn't it? Right, the Sun newspaper, Pep's divorce rant at players. Pep Guardiola told Man City players of his marriage split in a furious team talk, demanding that they show the passion he had lost, a new documentary reveals. Certainly novel. Interesting. Maybe they would score a few extra goals as a result of that. It's a slightly bizarre story. It's a very strange story, and there's also, I mean, odd, very odd. But anyway, let's take a quick break, John. We'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and I'm Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Let's have a look at this story, John. I mean, dear, oh dear. Front page of the Daily Mail and also the Daily Star. In fact, it's on a few of the pages. So who was the White House hoaxer who duped The PM, oh dear. This is not the first time this has happened either, is it? Maybe the first time it's happened to him, but we've seen stories like this before. Security fears over Burnham's messages with an imposter who posed as Trump's chief of staff.
Yeah, well, we know it wasn't her. We know it wasn't Susie Wiles, who's Trump's chief of staff. They seem to have exchanged a few messages. Number 10, of course, hasn't released the messages. Seem to go on for a wee bit. You know, this, I suppose it can happen. It's not funny. Well, it is funny, but it's not funny. But, you know, strange that somehow or other this person would manage to get either it was a direct phone call to his mobile phone or would have to come through some sort of switchboard to get there. So it must have been quite well, an elaborate hoax for it to happen.
I mean, it definitely has happened before, but it is embarrassing, isn't it, for the PM? I mean, the Daily Star going with he's just 4 weeks into his new job, but Andy's faked, caught out by Trump prankster, and then they talk about the crazy wildfire alert. That was weird, that alert, right?
We didn't have it because I'm presuming we didn't have it. I mean, we've had wildfires in the Cairngorms a couple of weeks ago, but nothing since. You know, we're not getting weather that's up to 38 degrees. It was a balmy, 15 or something this afternoon in the centre of Edinburgh, and it was raining. I had quite an amusing time. I bumped into a couple. We were at the book festival today in Edinburgh, and the book festival was great because you just bump into all, you know, you're walking past people who, who's that? Oh, it's Ian Rankin, or who's that over there? And I met a load of old journalists, right, that I know, a couple from London, and we were actually just having a laugh because it started raining, and I was saying to one particular guy who works for the BBC at Millbank, I was saying, do you remember this stuff? And it was quite a good laugh and nice. So we didn't get that alert last week.
It was. I think it was absolute abuse of power to send that. I mean, it was. I was on the phone to my son actually. We were having a chat, and then suddenly this, you know, incredibly loud.
So you were having a nuclear war.
Yeah, I mean, and it's don't use a portable barbecue. Like, right. I mean, seriously, apparently in Wales it caused an enormous amount of fear because it was sent in Welsh 10 minutes before it was sent in English. And, of course, people in the pub who didn't speak Welsh were thinking, what the hell is this? And they were desperately trying to find a Welsh speaker to translate it for them as they went into full-on panic, thinking like, you know, Putin had finally launched one. Extraordinary, but they're sticking by it. They're saying it's like a really good plan to send that. But there we go. Let's have a look at the Metro. It's been on all of the front pages. Hayden Panettiere, who's the young actress, she's on the front pages of most of the papers actually. Heroes star found dead after suspected overdose was an inspiration to her millions of fans. This is a tragedy. 36 years old and a mum.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. What can you say about a story about a 36-year-old passing away in these kind of circumstances? It's dreadful. It's awful.
It is horrible. It's really hard. She's really battled as well to get herself straight. It doesn't say what kind of drugs overdose, but I know she was suffering with some back pain, so I would imagine it was probably prescription drugs, but we don't know. But still, you know, a mum and a very young woman who was, you know, doing well in her career. It doesn't get much sadder, really. That doesn't sound much like peace, Mr. President. Trump's four-letter threat to bomb a US ally.
What?
I mean, I know you've picked this as well. Trump threatens to bomb Oman if it gets in the way of ending the Iran war. And what they're doing, Oman, is dealing with Iran, right, over the Strait of Hormuz?
Look, Oman's been playing, I think, quite a helpful role, back channels to Iran, trying to get the Iranians engaged and involved in getting to an end of this war, which is, I think, we're at 170 days in this war in Iran. I've just been looking at, the past few days and the president, so he's hacked off the Omanis today. I think yesterday he managed to hack off the South Koreans.
Yeah.
He tweeted that he talked about his great friend Kim Jong-un. I mean, which in itself is perverse and bizarre. He said that he was ordering Hesketh to have fewer military exercises with South Korea on the eve of the biggest military exercise that they have. Last week, in a speech to a Republican rally, he said that he was going to declare the Straits of Hormuz American territory. I mean, taking a step back from this, if this was any other world leader who was saying these kind of things, what would we be saying about it?
I know. I literally just cannot. I just don't. I don't know why anybody believes this guy, and I don't know why anybody supports this guy. I mean, to say to an ally, I'm gonna quote him because it is worth the quote. So if you're offended by mild swear words, I do apologise. But we're going to bomb the shit out of Oman. I mean, it's language like that supposed to be trying to sort out a diplomatic solution. He's also declared that they're having back-channel conversations with the IRGC. The IRGC has said that is fundamentally and absolutely not true, that there's no back-channel conversations with Trump, and then Trump declaring sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, which is going to upset everybody in the Gulf and around the world if he even attempts it. Yeah, and it's illegal, by the way.
Yeah, and the war continues in Iran. Well, no, at least there's no ceasefire, despite the fact that that's been declared. We've got a situation now where the 15-point peace plan for Gaza has been rejected by Netanyahu. Which anybody could have told Trump was going to happen.
Absolutely,
anyway.
with his elections coming up, no chance.
They continue, the Israelis, despite protestations from the international community, to do what they are doing in the West Bank. I mean, anything Trump goes anywhere near, his inability to... I think, as you rightly said, what he's now saying about anything is just not believable. And we'll see how much, because the key test of all of this is going to come in November, we'll see how believable it is to the American public.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at The Guardian now. Another story about Richard Tice. Stop fighting climate change and enjoy the heat waves. It's an extraordinary message to be handing out, like we were saying before, about the wine, when a lot of people are suffering at the moment with these heat waves. And we know that they are not a good thing for the economy. It's cost billions. We know that this is not good for the country. We know it's not good for food security, water security, any of those things. Are quite extraordinary to tell us to stop moaning about it and enjoy the sun.
Look, there is an interesting point here, though, which is at the same time that this is happening, Burnham's government is looking at those two, the oil and the gas field, Rosebank and Jackdaw in the north of Scotland. And whilst I think certainly under Burnham they would be more disposed, at least on Jackdaw, the gas field, to actually let that go ahead, they will need to see whether they do or not, do the same for Rosebank. This is happening at the same time as people are seeing what's happening with the climate. They are seeing what's happening with, all of those wildfires around the country. So there's an interesting kind of dichotomy for the government here.
Yeah, apparently he's going to delay decisions now because of that.
Yeah, well, you know, I can remember earlier this year the oil companies and the gas companies saying that, for example, I think it was on Jackdaw rather than Rosebank that if they announce it in the summer, it can get into production very quickly. But if there's a further delay to any of this, then that's not going to happen. So, but it is a problem for the government, who are trying on the one hand to do something about, you know, the cost of living. They are trying also at a time when unemployment's starting to rise. You know, oil and gas is a big employer in this country. And if these fields were allowed to go ahead, then it would at least, you know, probably add additional jobs and certainly secure jobs for a lot of people in that sector. But
what effect will it have on the cost of living when those products are sold on the open market?
Well, yeah, but, you know, the argument would, part of the argument would be, certainly in the case of gas, that, you know, it would be much better for us to produce our own domestic gas than it would be to bring it in with a huge environmental footprint from, you know, the Middle East or from the United States, where, you know, first the gas gets refrigerated, it's put in boats, it comes away across the Atlantic or away through the Mediterranean to here.
Or pipeline from Norway, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, but you know, we import a lot of this stuff. And we'd be better doing it ourselves, right?
They'd have to divert it from the world markets then. They'd have to say, right, anything that comes out of Jackdaw, we're keeping for ourselves. And I don't know how that would go down.
Look, even if they didn't do that, I think there would be, you know, some kind of environmental benefit from producing your own.
Yeah,
because I think, you know, because of the footprint of bringing it here.
And we've got rid of all our storage facilities for gas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, the government, it's put the government in quite a difficulty. I don't know. There's still also an argument. I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I think there's also an argument which is about, you know, we do contribute to, you know, this, obviously, to this whole situation about the climate. But, you know, unless the Americans and the Chinese and the Indians in particular, you know, who really are responsible for, you know, the vast amount of emissions around the planet, really take serious action on this stuff, this is going to get worse anyway.
Yeah, it certainly is. A quick break, and John and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, the Daily Express. Actually, the papers are sort of undecided on a front page, aren't they? They've been very sort of scattered. Unusually, we normally get them banding together much more. But the Daily Express has gone with smugglers use Britain as a transit hub for migrants. Migrant camps like the notorious jungle in Calais could now grow on our coast as Britain becomes a transit hub for migrants wanting to go the other way. So migrants gathering here to go to other countries in Europe.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting story. I'd like to see, a bit more evidence of what they're talking about, to be honest. We've got an issue in Scotland where there are a lot of migrants coming here from other parts of the UK and from Ireland on the basis that we have more liberal housing legislation in Scotland, that it's easier for people to get accommodation in Scotland than it is in other parts of the UK, and that's caused an issue. But this issue, which suggests that, people might be going in the other way and are all going to end up back in the south coast. I've never really come across that before.
No, I've not seen anything about this, but they're saying that the traffickers are exploiting a loophole in our borders. Migrants arriving in the UK on visitor or student visas are contacting smugglers because they want to reach other European countries. Well, there's nothing stopping them leaving the country. I don't understand why they'd need a smuggler to do that.
Well, unless they don't have any documentation, or, how do you get out of the country if you don't have the proper papers?
Yeah, it's an odd one. I've not seen that. Yeah. I've not seen that story either. One of the stories that you picked, which I knew the second I saw that it was a British drone, I thought, oh, here we go. Russia has threatened the UK with consequences after British drones were used by Ukraine. That's a bit rich, isn't it, considering that Ukraine has used American weapons, has used German weaponry, has used weaponry from all over the world, actually, in its fight with Russia, and yet Russia has singled out the UK because some of these drones that are going much further into Russia now were built by Britain.
Yeah, look, the thing that struck me about this story, we've already spoken about Donald Trump and his loose language, his strong language earlier on this evening, is that if you look at the statement that's been made by the Russian embassy in the UK, they describe Britain as being an accomplice and accessory to the bloody crimes and terrorist attacks of Ukrainian neo-Nazis.
Wow.
And you go, pretty strong stuff. And they say that they warn there will be a higher price if we become more involved. Now, that's, don't usually, it's hardly diplomatic.
No, but diplomacy seems to, I don't even think anybody knows the meaning of that word anymore.
Yeah, but given, where it's got to be treated seriously is given what's happened before, and things that we both know and suspect. There's a whole load of Russian activity around about the seas of the UK. We've had, Russian agents here perpetrating attacks on citizens. You have to treat this stuff seriously.
Yeah, you do. And we've also seen Russian ships being ever more aggressive and making a point all around the British Isles. We've seen Russian aircraft breaking over NATO countries. We've seen all sorts of infractions by Russia. But so to threaten us does seem a little rich, one would say. Although I knew they would the second I saw that had happened.
Sure, look, I agree with you entirely, but, this is where we are. We live in a very volatile, situation, international situation. And, people are much more prone to be, or want to be, dialing this up than dialing it down.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The iPaper has gone with this story. Neighbours told, don't phone 999 to report next door's barbecue. What kind of numpty is doing that?
Well, look, I think that you go back to the story we were talking about earlier about, you know, the alert last week,
yeah, but
right,
how
about barbecues.
stupid do you have to be to say, oh, my neighbour's having a barbecue?
Yeah, well, yeah, I get that. You know, yeah, we live in a very strange world.
A very strange world full of idiots. First of all, idiots who use those little, you know, disposable barbecues basically on straw. And they all kind of, I was going to say something really rude then. I'm so glad I didn't. What kind of idiot would do that? And then you've got people complaining that their neighbours are having a barbecue. I mean, honestly, just use a bit of common sense, right? Just think.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. It's very odd. But look, you know, these things, as you rightly say, are dangerous, and it's the idea that, you know, a lot of this stuff is just like thoughtless.
Yeah.
You know,
when there's fireworks in this weather as well. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, when people are, you know, the fire brigade is having to go on the television and say to people, if you're going out on the hills this weekend, you know, don't take a portable barbecue, take a picnic. You're just like, this is, you know, use your head.
Yeah, but people are just so stupid, though. They need to be told everything now.
Yeah, don't smoke and throw the cigarette away after you're finished.
Or light fireworks, or I mean, honestly, people are so stupid. I think it's almost Darwinian, you know. I think the public, as a species, we're getting dumber and dumber and dumber. We'll just be the end of our own existence, won't we, eventually? We'll be so stupid, we won't be able to do anything by ourselves. Ridiculous. Just before I let you go, there's a couple of other things I wanted to talk to you about. This one on the back on the front of the Times. High fidelity music tastes may be key to compatibility. What about you and Mrs. Boothman? Do you dance along to the same music?
Oh, well, funnily enough, we were talking about this earlier. We are going to see Florence and the Machine at Ingolston next Monday, which I think is be quite good. No, look, you can buy into all this stuff. You know, people like the same kind of music. People who've got the same interests. You know, this. You know, that's what makes the world go around. It brings people together. You know, I think this thing about music in particular is just a really, really interesting finding.
Yeah.
That you know, this appears to be, you know, up there as being, you know, one of the main reasons that people do find compatibility with each other. Yeah, it's a good story, and music's just such, you know, it's just it does bring people together. It's just such a fantastic thing.
Yeah,
you know, I think we've got the same taste. She likes a lot of heavy music that I don't particularly like, and she slags me off a bit for some of my rather eclectic tastes. But I think, yeah, look, it's. I think.
Well, you're going to concerts together, right?
Yeah, no, it's a good piece. We went to see Jules Holland the other week. It was really, really good, right? Just interesting.
Yeah, they're saying that forget, you know, the dating apps and personality quizzes, that actually a study has suggested that shared fondness for a genre or particular artist can reveal far more about a couple's compatibility. As to rather than whether they're both organised or share the same politics or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, that's fair. I would kind of buy in. Look, it depends on the individual. I mean, you know, we met at a political conference because we're that kind of we're those kind of people, right? But yeah, these days the music thing's really important.
Yeah, I think it's certainly one of the strands, isn't it? For me, it's a shared sense of humour. Actually, is the single most important thing. Even if you know, I'm not a fan of the Beatles. If they like the Beatles, then that's fine. But it would be, if we can't laugh about it, then that's the problem.
Yeah, look, one of the great joys in our family is, you know, my wife and my daughter go and do concerts together.
Well, that's good.
So they do, and again, you know, things in music these days that were popular 60 years ago, right, are still popular. So I still recount a story about my wife and my daughter one particular weekend going to Liverpool to see the Rolling Stones and then flying from Liverpool to Dublin to go and see Duran Duran.
Wow, that's a
which
weekend.
Is just kind of, well, it's just, and that's their shared interest, and that's the kind of thing that brings them together. You know, that's, you know, I can go and see the football with my son, and that's our kind of bit, and that's just what you know, my wife and my daughter do, and it's brilliant.
That is brilliant. That is, you are the coolest family. You're very, very cool and hip. John, thank you so much for joining me. John Boosman, there, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Just a reminder of the front pages. Like I said, John and I were saying that it's quite a mixed bag, actually. But The Guardian's going with Tice, stop fighting climate change and enjoy the heat wave. The Daily Mail going with that extraordinary story about Andy Burnham, who was texting or messaging with an imposter who posed as Trump's chief of staff. Angela Rayner has paved the way for more traveller sites. Residents will be forced to tolerate lawbreakers as reform hinder councils from blocking new camps. And Burnham is to block water firms from using surge pricing during the drought, and I'm sure that Jeremy Kyle will be covering those stories and more on the breakfast show in the morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and this is Talk Back. And that gives you exactly that opportunity to talk back on the big stories of the day. And there is no bigger story really today than this one, and that is Reform proposes a ban on most benefits for foreign nationals in the UK. And what they mean by most benefits is practically all of them, housing benefit, welfare payments, housing benefit, pension credit, job seekers allowance, child benefit, free childcare and disability benefits. The only exemptions there would be is the war widows pension and armed forces compensation. So they're the only two benefits that foreign nationals will be able to claim. Reform is claiming that by 2029, around 1.5 million adults who are not British citizens would receive universal credit, and around 215,000 would receive PIP. Now, this would involve all sorts of issues with the European countries. It would involve, that's for the foreign nationals anyway, because that would include those European nationals who are living here now, who have been living here for quite some time, that they've been paying into the system, they've been paying tax, they've been paying national insurance, they've set up businesses here, they're employing people. They would be disallowed to claim any form of benefits. But of course, that would be reciprocated, presumably, for anybody in the EU countries that's British who's claiming benefits from those countries. So they wouldn't be allowed to do that. They'd have to claim it through Britain. It seems imbalanced at the moment. There seems to be more European nationals in Britain potentially claiming benefits than there are British people in European countries claiming benefits, although I would imagine that a lot of people in European countries are already retired. Genric has also said that welfare to work programmes would be happening, which will require people who've claimed benefits for more than 12 months to provide 20 hours a week of work for their community. So if you've been on benefits for more than 12 months, you'll be required to work for 20 hours, to volunteer to work for 20 hours free of charge in order for your benefits. Do you support that? Now, there's been many iterations of this that I know that I've talked about over the last probably 3 decades. Many governments and parties and wannabes have suggested welfare to work schemes, and they seem to be very popular until you dig into how it would work, how expensive it would be to run, what benefits we would actually get from that. I mean, Reform is saying, well, we'll get all the graffiti cleaned off walls and we'll get rubbish picked up. There are people who do those jobs who would lose those jobs, and also, how do you get people to work if they're not going to work? I mean, you can say that you're going to take their benefits off them, and you can potentially do that. But again, what happens to them after that? What happens to the cost of that decision on the British people? And also they're saying that people on PIP, it'll be anybody with what they determine is a minor condition, such as a mental health condition, a neurodivergent condition, things like ADHD, anxiety, anything like that would be off PIP, and only those who really needed it would get it, and they would be face-to-face assessments to make sure that they should get it. So these are big changes, and look, I'm not going to argue that these changes don't need to be made, that some changes need to be made. I do question about foreign nationals who've paid into the system, who've been here for decades and paid tax and national insurance, being told that they're not entitled to any benefits. I find that I don't know how we square that circle. I don't know how we convince people they've got to pay these things, but they can't get anything out of it. It's like paying for your insurance policy and then told, but by the way, if your house is burgled, you're not allowed to claim, right? You're going to pay it, but you're not allowed to claim, OK? Or paying your car insurance and being told, look, you're not going to be able to claim for that, but you are still going to have to pay it. So I don't know how that works. And while we're at it, there are plenty of British people who've never paid into the system who are entitled to everything. So I'm not sure about the fairness of that either. It should be like an insurance scheme, right? You've got to have paid into it to take money out of it. But there are many millions of people who've never paid a penny towards the benefit system and yet are reaping rewards from it. They just happen to have been born in this country and are British nationals. So, look, it does need changing. I'm the first to say that. I'm just not sure these are the changes that can even be made. And they certainly won't be made quickly. Any negotiation with Europe about this agreed deal that we had, this reciprocal arrangement, would take a long time to fix. So would the welfare to work scheme. Like I said, I've been talking about this for decades. Various points during the decades, various people have come up with the idea that if you're on benefits, you need to work to get your benefits. Again, some will say, well, look, I worked for 30 years to pay into the benefit system. I've been unemployed for 2 years. Why do I have to go and work? I've already paid. I've already worked for my benefits. I've paid into them. So I don't know how this can possibly work in the real world. But I do agree that something needs to change. So I want to know from you, do you agree with these it can only be in theory at the moment because it's not been tested. And even in the 50-page policy document, there was no detail. So we couldn't really see how this was going to work or how quickly this was going to work or how they were going to implement any of these changes. And there'll be a lot of pushback, of course, from people who are on PIP, or, they'll be claiming that they'll be saying, look, I do need it. It is not a minor illness. They'll have to go for assessment. There'll be appeals and appeals and appeals. And the whole thing will take a long time. So is there a better way of doing it? Can you think of a better way of cutting our benefits bill? Do you think that it is that PIP really does need to be changed, that it should be means tested, actually, that if you're working and working hard and working to earn a decent amount of money, that you shouldn't need PIP, that it should go to those most in need who are the poorest. So what do you think would make welfare fair? 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Let's go to the calls. And Luke is in Bromley. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning. It's been a while. How are you?
It has been. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. It's
We've
cool,
only got
isn't
a couple
it?
of minutes before
nice.
the break, unfortunately, but got a lot to say on this. Because,
OK. No. We've got a while before I can take the break whenever I want to, Luke.
Oh,
let me tell you that. Fair enough. So tell me, what have you got to say?
Yeah, OK. So, look, my heart of hearts says I want everyone to be helped who needs help, and obviously that's what we want. But we can't afford to do it as a country, so we have to do something. We need reform to do that. I see people around about me who don't need it. I see people who do, who perhaps don't have enough. They've realised that there's enough foreign people claiming benefits that add up to £50 billion a year over 5 years, over the last 5 years.
That's also PIP, and that's also other schemes as well. That's not just the foreign workers.
Oh, okay. In total, they've worked out 50 billion to save.
Yeah.
So they want to make it easier for people with definite conditions to not keep being reassessed, and they want other people under mild conditions, as they term it, to be reassessed. It's not to say you won't get it; it's reassessed to make sure you're right to having it or not. I think, from experience, one thing I'd say to anyone is work is not just for money; it's for your own mental health. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to help themselves, go out and volunteer for something. You never know, you might get paid eventually, but it helps you, okay? Leaving the house every day, we all know that.
Without a doubt, I would not argue with that at all. I think work is about way more than just earning money. It's good for your mental health.
So I think we need to realise that there's lots of common denominators here that we need to agree with rather than just see what we disagree with and how we have a fight about the whole thing. Because there's lots of good things that can come from what they're offering. And who's going to get helped instead? I mean, if they don't get 50 billion from this, they'll have to take from something else, Now, there are people who get 7.1 1 billion goes towards mobility, for example. That's a heck of a lot of money. Okay. Now
that is paid for out of the benefits, though.
Yes, I realise, but it's out of the it's still money from the government somehow.
Yeah, now, but people give up part of their PIP for it.
And I do that also myself.
Right. Okay.
I'm an enhanced PIP, and I give let them have half that back to get the car I want.
So you do, yeah. I mean, it might be that amount of money is going in, but otherwise you would just have it in your pocket, right?
That's right, but it still adds to 7.1 billion that they could look at, because we know people. I know of people, and they've told me in the showroom, or Volvo, for example, that there are plenty of people who come, clog up the system because they're claiming for their parents, and they end up keeping the car. Okay, the parent never drives it because they're 90 years old or something. Mm-hmm. They use this car, free insurance, free servicing, lovely brand new spanking car, no, park where they want, everything else. Things like that need to be reassessed and grabbed on, because that's a lot of money. There's other things that need to be reassessed, but I just think that the opportunity for people to get out and contribute something towards society. I mean, clean the streets is a good idea, and.
But I have to say, Luke, that, like I said, over the decades that I've been doing this scheme has popped up every now and then. I've talked about it many, many times, and it always just disappears. The welfare to work schemes just always get dropped, and that is because they would be impossible to run. As much as I think that they're probably a good idea for some people, they've always been dropped.
Well, the biggest thing, obviously, that's been discussed at the minute is who would get it and who wouldn't. Big, and that's obviously the big slam dunk. Who's going to lose it, essentially, if you're foreign, you've worked here, you contributed, you've been in the country 15 years, paying into the thing, but you're classed as like Spanish or something, then you'll lose your ability to get those benefits if you got ill. Well, my question is, why are you still not British in that time? Because you're not
I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons that people, they want to keep their passport because you can get through, the European system. They don't have to. I mean, they've been living in this country for 15 years and paying into everything that the government requires them to pay into, and we're going to tell them that they can't get sickness, disability benefit.
They do deserve it. They deserve being looked after. But if they want to be under the Spanish banner, for example, they then get benefits under Spain. If they want to be under British, then they get it under here. If they want to be in the UK on a working visa and get all the benefits that comes from having a business in the UK.
But why should they pay into it and be told they can't get it?
Well, I mean,
because they won't get an exemption. I mean, if I was a foreign national, I'd be saying, fine, then I don't pay my national insurance.
Yeah,
and I don't pay as much tax then.
But if you name another country in the world which would take you on and pay for you to live on benefits, if you're
the whole of Europe.
National. What?
The whole of Europe do it in reciprocal agreement with Britain and each other.
Well, that's the European, but an actual country. I mean,
France. Do you want me to name all the countries in the European Union? Because each of those countries has that agreement with each other.
Yeah, I just wouldn't go to America or Kenya like I have done for 6 months, for example, and expect them to pay for my to be paid to do nothing, not nothing, but on their benefits.
Yes, but if you've paid into the system,
I had insurance before I went.
Yeah, but if you paid into that system and you had done for a couple of decades, you would hope that it would be there, wouldn't you?
Well, the NHS is still there for them, don't forget. It's not saying the NHS isn't there. We're talking about benefits on a daily basis to not work and get paid. That's what we're talking about, aren't we?
Yeah, but we're also talking about people who have worked. And then when you talk about the number of Brits that have never worked and are claiming everything...
I mean, there are categories which will be fine. For example, carers, nursing, for example, are not classes in this document, 50-page document. They'll be okay. Services people who worked in the prison service, they'll be fine. I think there's a certain amount of years where you are much off the system. But they're saying anyone within the last 5 years would be considered. Look, it's not easy to think about. It's not nice. Because
if I was European, I'd be getting out of Dodge. I'd be taking my company and going back to whichever country I came from.
Well, you wouldn't. You'll wait until you get ill, if you did get ill within the last and then you'd go back. You don't.
No, I wouldn't. I'd cease to pay into a system that wouldn't support me.
But they're going to change the system, aren't they? They're going to say, look, you can. The employers will have to pay an insurance for you to be looked after, and then that'll come out. So over 5 people, they'll pay for you. So it's not like you wouldn't get it. It's just under new conditions that you get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
somewhere.
we will see. I mean, I agree that things have to change, and I haven't got any bright ideas myself, but I know that the welfare to work scheme has reared its head several times and has always just melted away. Once costings come in.
My last point would be, if we all done what we've always done, then we'll always get what we've always got. Something has to change. I think we all agree with that. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be easy, but we have to start somewhere. And I don't think we can provide welfare for the world. But
we don't provide welfare for the world. I mean, that is a very reform statement. We do not provide welfare for the world, and a lot of people, especially European nationals, do pay in to our system and then very, very rarely ever claim it. So, there's a net benefit there, at least. Luke, thank you. Good to talk to you. Going to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and we're talking about the reforms on the welfare bill, and there's a couple of things in here. One of them is the proposals to include a welfare to work scheme, which will require people who've claimed benefits for more than 12 months to provide 20 hours a week of work for their community. Now, this would apply to those deemed fit to work and will be organised by their local council. The MP said those who fail to take part or poorly perform will face sanctions, including potential cuts to their benefits. They'll work to clean up high streets and parks, so beautify neglected spaces, to carry out minor repairs, to staff libraries and community centres, to perform many other tasks from the list that we've published today. So if you've been on benefits for more than 12 months and you are deemed fit to work, you will be required to go and do some tasks organised by your local council. I haven't heard anything from the local councils yet about how they're going to organise this, what costs will be applied to this, because there will be costs. There will be people who push back, there will be people who refuse, there will be people who don't turn up. If they don't turn up, what are you going to do? You're going to go and get them? Do the police get involved? What happens? How does this even work? And like I said, over the many years that I've been doing this job, this welfare to work scheme has been mentioned many times, and it always just melts away to nothing. And I think it can only be that when you see the actual costs of running something like this that would be borne presumably by the councils in return for having slave labour or free labour, then it disappears. I could be wrong this time. Maybe I am. I'm not arguing with the fact that there are some people who are fit to work, who should be working, and they should work for their benefits. It's just how do you get them to do it? So that's just some of the ideas. The PIP reduction as well, it will be replaced by another scheme, and that you'll have to face in-face assessments, and there's a good chance that you would have your PIP taken from you, particularly for what Reform are referring to as mild conditions, ADHD, anxiety, depression, things like that. They deem those as mild. So, but I'm not sure how people are getting PIP if it is mild. That's because the PIP questionnaire seems to be quite difficult to get anything out of, but then yet some people are managing to do that. So that's what we're talking about. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Dave is in Essex. Dave, very good morning to you.
And a very good morning to you, Petrie.
Lovely to talk to you. What do you think about this? What do you think? This all sounds good?
Well, there's one thing I want to see reformed in this country desperately and very quick, and that is this ADHD, giving people money for their children for ADHD. Look, I as a kid had, I suppose today it would be classified as ADHD. I was a misbehaved kid. I used to misbehave. I was a child. My mother used to smack me in front of all the shoppers up when we go shopping if I misbehave, and smack me at the back of the legs. And she'd say, when you go home, you go straight up to your room and you stay there. Now, we did not have a PlayStation. We did not have a smartphone. We had nothing. And you'd look out the window and you'd see your friends kicking a ball about, and you'd see him come knock on the door. Can David come out to play? No, he's been bad. But you'd look again out the window. You'd creep downstairs and say, sorry to your mother. She'd say, that's not good enough. She'd say, before you go out, you will clean the kitchen floor, which you did. And if you didn't do it properly, you would go back and do it again. And then she'd say, you can go out now. And that was that. No ADHD. People knew how to handle situations in them days. It's all different now. Now it's ADHD.
Well, I mean, just because you didn't have ADHD and you had naughty boy syndrome doesn't mean that ADHD isn't real. I've got a friend of mine who's a mum to a girl with Kabuki syndrome, actually, but she's also, along with that, has got ADHD as well. And that is it's very, very, very hard for her as a single mum with this wonderful girl. But it is very, very difficult. There are some people who do need help. I don't think all of them do, Dave. I think that there are some who are faking it, inventing it, doing what they can to get it.
I totally agree.
But there are parents who are dealing with very, very big problems with ADHD, and I wouldn't want the baby to be thrown out with the bathwater.
Yes, well, I agree with you in a certain respect, but all the children I grew up with, and there was lots of them, we all got a job and we all went to work. We left school at 15.
Yeah, you had no choice, right?
You know, so maybe I was lucky, or maybe they was lucky. But on the scale it is today, just by ticking a box, you know, and sending it into wherever department you send it, and they're granted these benefits, is totally wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they are too lax with certain benefits and certain classifications. Not all ADHD is the same.
No.
Not all anxiety is the same. Not all depression is the same.
Yes.
You know, but it doesn't negate the fact there are people with real problems with these diseases. And for Reform to say, oh, they're just minor, I think is a little bit is wrong, because not everybody has a minor ailment, right?
Yes.
There's a scale.
On the anxiety side of it, my youngest son, he suffered from anxiety. We thought he was being bullied at school. So anyway, we asked him and he said no. And then come the day when he said, I'm not going to school anymore. And, you know, he come out with it, he said, I can't understand what the teacher's saying. I said, what do you mean? He said he was an Asian, I don't know, Indian, Pakistan, I really don't know. I phoned up the school and complained, because what he said to my child, when my child said to him, I can't hear you, I can't understand what you're saying, that teacher turned around and said to my son, is there something wrong with you? And Petrie, to say I was mad. I phoned up his head of year and he said he'd look into it. We never heard no more, and my son never attended that school anymore. And yes, I agree. We had a terrible, terrible couple of years. It cost me X amount of televisions where something had come flying across the room and hit the television. It doesn't matter. We battled it.
Yeah.
My son has just graduated first-class honours in philosophy.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, it is, and he's going to the LSE in London. But it's me and my wife gave him all the time in the world. We got him a one-to-one at our local library for his maths and English, which he needed to then go on to college. He did my wife had to walk him to college, a boy of 17.
Anxiety is a real issue, isn't it? It can be a massive problem.
Yes, well, he got over that and he wanted to go to America, and it frightened the life out of us. He'd met a girl online and we didn't know, and we couldn't stop him. By now he was 19, 20. He worked at a depot, Sainsbury's depot, and he come home and I thought he won't last a week. Blisters on his shoes, his heels, his shoe. You know, it was worrying. But he earned that money and he went to the States, and he never started university till he was 23, I believe. 24.
I think that's the best age to start as well, to be honest with you, when people know what they want to do.
Yes, he'd made his mind up what he wanted to do. He had to take a year induction, and then he did his 3 years, and this is where he is now.
Wow, that's amazing that you and your wife were able to help him out of that.
I do understand the anxiety of it.
Yeah.
And I question myself now to this day, was it because he couldn't understand that teacher?
Oh, there'll be more.
He loves to study.
Yeah, there would have been more to it to induce that sort of level of anxiety. I would imagine there'd have been more to it than that. But you never know with kids, do you? That's the problem. But I mean, he's lucky he had you and your wife to get him through all of that, and he's come through the other side. But some people don't. They don't have great parents. They don't have that support. And just to suggest that anxiety is a mild condition, I think belies really what a lot of people do go through. A good speech to you, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to take a break, but I'll be back and taking your calls in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And this is Talk Back, and it's giving you the opportunity to do just that. No guests, nothing else, just you and me. And we're talking about reforms, ideas for the welfare bill going forward, should they be in government. Reform proposes a ban on most benefits for foreign nationals in the UK, and talking about re-establishing PIP as a different type of benefit, and the welfare to work scheme, which will require people who claim benefits for more than 12 months to provide 20 hours a week of work in their communities. This would apply to those deemed fit to work and will be organised by their local council. So what does fit to work mean? There are people who are off work for reasons of obesity, for reasons of alcoholism, for reasons of anxiety, for reasons of depression, people with agoraphobia, people who have social anxiety. You know, they won't be able to go out, and will they have to work? Presumably not, which doesn't really solve the problem, does it, of people being on benefits that Reform thinks are not fit to be, or should be fit to go to work. So I want to see more detail, as ever. I think that the benefits bill does need to be looked at. I think it needs some radical changes. I'm just not sure that these radical changes are the ones that need to happen. Let me know what you think, and maybe your experiences of being on benefits, particularly if you are a foreign national. Foreign nationals, by the way, the European foreign nationals pay in to the system over many years and are less likely to claim that money back. So how do we establish a foreign national, somebody who was, you know, not born in this country but came here when they were 3 years old? They've paid into the system their whole lives. We say to them they can't have any benefits. I don't know how it would work, but give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Tristan is in Southend. Good morning, Tristan. How are you?
Hello, my darling. Good morning. I'm really well, thanks. You keeping okay?
Yeah, I'm all right, actually, for a Monday. It's all right. Oh, it's Tuesday now, isn't it? It's Tuesday already.
You've got to get through till Thursday morning hours, you? So you'll be fine. Bless you. So as you know, I'm sure you'll recall, I'm registered blind, as in completely blind. I've got nothing. And today alone, I've had 2 epileptic seizures, and that's quite a normal day for me, to be honest, at the moment.
How do you manage those?
So, how have I managed those? I don't know. To be honest, there's nothing I'm doing wrong, that's for sure.
No, but how do you manage them? I mean, as a blind person,
you really
it must be terrifying.
No, this is why I'm always a prisoner of my own home. I never leave. That's the annoying thing. And when it happens and it's this bad, obviously, people see this illusion on the telly that you get better 1 minute later and come round and you're back to normal. No, you're not. You're out for 3 hours cold. You lose control of your bladder and bowel. They go as well. And when you are back to normal, you're straight in the shower, so you've got the cost of the electric, and then you've got the washing machine on because you can't leave piles of dirty clothes here, there and everywhere during the week. And it all adds up. My electric bill's about £300 a month.
Wow.
And they're talking of scrapping this. And I'm going to do so naughty here, you're going to tell me off. I'm going to do to you what I did to the lady in the job centre. Now, the lady in the job centre said, what work do you want to do? And I said, name to me 3 types of work and what they are that I can apply for and would get. And she sat there, she said, care work. You couldn't make that up, could you?
As a blind epileptic?
Yeah, she said, how do you consider care work? And I thought, you're not going to be much help here, are you? So the same question to you yourself, what do you do with me?
You could work in a milk shop. a milkshake shop.
Jacuzzi bubble maker, yeah, I could see that, couldn't I?
You could do.
Couldn't even see him.
You could do that. No, I mean, being serious, of course, you don't know when you're going to have these epileptic fits, right? Which would mean that I completely understand why you're a prisoner in your home, because when I before I was on the drugs that I'm on, I used to collapse quite a lot with my MS, right? So my legs would just stop working, literally,
of course,
on the high street, and I would be just walking along with the shops, no warning, nothing, and fall over, and it was so embarrassing because people always thought I was drunk, or you know, it was the most embarrassing thing. So I didn't ever go out. I just couldn't go out because I was just so upset and aware. It might not happen for a week or 2 weeks, but then it would happen, and that would be so humiliating. So until I got my drugs sorted out, I was a prisoner in my. So I get it, much less of an issue than you're dealing with, but nonetheless. And so I know why you're a prisoner in your home. I completely get it, because that would be awful if you lose your bowels and your bladder. How embarrassing. That is not something you want to go through.
So I'm going to say
you can't work. There's no way you could work.
No, I won't be thanked by your channel for saying this, but you've got lived experience of this, Petrie. And that's why I can listen to on this channel, but nobody else any longer, because the compassion is dead with all the other presenters, I'm sorry to say. And I hate this word scrounger, because I take that so personally when I hear it. Do you know, it really hurts me, and I find it devastating and upsetting. And the fact I'm getting quite emotional right now, because it's been in the news all day.
Yeah.
So it does upset me.
Of course it upsets you. And there is no way that anybody like you should even have one moment's worry about any of this.
But these reforms always I'll get hit with as well, Petrie. They make no exceptions. These are always blanket reforms. This is what people don't get.
This is what the people don't understand. That's exactly right. I mean, but being blind, I mean, they couldn't get you scrubbing graffiti, could they? I mean,
no.
They just, I mean, if you're blind and epileptic, you are somebody who we want to help and support and make sure that you have a decent standard of living. You're such a lovely bloke, and I can't bear the thought of you worrying about it for even 1 minute. I think it's disgraceful, honestly.
You're too nice for talk, Petrie. You really are, bless you.
No, it's just being a human being to a human being.
No,
I mean, there's no way you should, anybody who's living like you should even worry for a minute. We want you to have a lovely life, not one full of anxiety and fear. That's not fair.
Thank you.
Bless
I can
you.
see it would help people with anxiety and things, because it will help them break the circle of constantly being trapped and looked away, or to give them social circles.
If they're supported,
it may really help if they're supported.
If they're supported out of that rather than bullied out of that. So it's got to be the carrot, not the stick. And I fear the stick, because, as you said, the stick doesn't care who it's hitting, right?
Yeah.
It'll just go for anybody that it thinks is a scrounger or a skiver.
Because we live in a country where compassion's dead now, Petrie. It doesn't exist anymore.
I know, empathy, it's gone. I agree, it has gone, and it is heartbreaking that it's gone. I mean, I get called all sorts of names because I am a human being, and I have empathy. And apparently that makes me weak. I think that makes me strong, because empathy is quite difficult to carry, because I get quite upset about things. But you, I will defend you till my dying breath, people like you.
Bless you.
Always. Absolutely no question about it. You take care.
And you, my darling.
Think about that. Oh, cocktail waiter. You could do cocktail shaking.
Love it.
See, there's a couple of jobs. We'll get you sorted, Tristan. You can come and work for me. People like that need protecting. We need to look after Tristan. Joe is in Brighton. Morning, Joe.
Hi, Petrie. It's me again,
Hi.
Joe from Brighton. Obviously.
Good to speak to you.
Oh, my friend's got MS, and when he takes this £20,000 injection, his behaviour goes all odd and everything, and he starts getting weird pains in the body. So some months he doesn't take it, and other months he does.
Right.
And he tries to function. And I'm telling you, what I'm seeing reform, they don't want to be scrutinized about the benefits they're getting from their donors, but they want to do the Trump thing, what he did with the Latinos. Vote for me. And then as soon as he came in, he started deporting husbands, brothers back to Latino countries or to El Salvador. Reform will never get in now because anyone who's got a sense of a brain cell can see by 2029, 2030, they might be 65 years old. More than 30% of Clapton was over 60, 65 who voted for him. Nobody today in their right mind with AI around, white-collar jobs going, warehouse jobs being replaced with robots, people breaking their backs working for... You know how many friends I've worked for the Royal Mail and ended up needing an operation after they worked in the sorting office?
Really?
Yeah, all these people are going to need the NHS. They're not thinking ahead. Reform don't want to be scrutinised about their benefits. Why they keep on going to CPAC in America to meet American businesses to asset strip more of our services. This happened in other councils who took on private companies to run their admin and within 3 years had to buy them out of the contract because it was a mess. Reform want to say there's always some other guy to look at. Don't look at us. Look at other people. I think the whole project is down the bin from today. You know, at first they got back people with the fortress. Some people who wanted to, you know, be someone else's problem. It's somebody else who's getting attacked, not me. But now people really got to think you're working in a manual job, labor job, heavily intensive. In 5 year times, you might need PIP. So, you know, all I see is they're trying to do diversion, blame somebody else, grievancy. You know, people on the right always have a grievance as long as they're getting their donors to do whatever they want for building and, you know, going past planning permission or whatever. I mean, it's just a con, and people need to wake up because you will be ill one day. Nobody believes they're going to use the NHS, and it comes. You know, let me tell you a story. There's a friend of a person I know who I grew up with. He was playing with his daughter. A glass of water fell into his mouth, and then he had an epileptic fit. And since then, he's had epileptic fits because this cold water went down his throat when he least expected. That's how quick you can become ill. You can open a cold bottle of water. You know, if you've got diabetes, they say you shouldn't actually drink a cold bottle of water off the fridge. You should have a kind of lukewarm bottle, even with diabetes. So you can.
Any of us can be ill or disabled like that in a second, right? You could step out. Somebody tomorrow will become disabled. That's listening to the show now. Somebody will step out in front of a bus, fall off a ladder, you know, be in a car crash, whatever it might be. We are, all of us, within moments of needing the support that we're talking about here. And that's what we've got to remember.
That's right. I mean, I was on a bus, and unfortunately, the lady driver kept on putting down the power brakes, and I smacked my head into the doorbell twice, and then into my chest. I was paid out $4,500, and I wasn't going to do it. And I did it because I had an accident in Bournemouth where my friend, we wasn't meant to drive, we were meant to sleep in the car, and he crashed into the roundabout at 74 miles per hour. So my sternum hurt me for 10 years, and I had musculoskeletal issues along with asthma.
From the safety belt?
Lucky I had the belt on, just by smashing against the board, and I had glasses on, and one of the lens came out, and since then I've got insomnia and sleep apnea. So
So that's in an instant. Your life is just turned around.
That's right. Your sternum is one of the most painful pains you could ever have. Like people have sciatica, that's painful. But try your sternum in the middle. It was the most painful thing I've ever had.
I broke my coccyx once. That was painful.
And, you know, tramadol. And I do have no idea that I was taking opioids. Look what it's doing to everybody now, opioids.
Yeah.
That's the other thing what reform doesn't understand. Some of these people are on opioids. And
the opioid crisis,
Yeah. And, you know, people don't know that Voltron and ibuprofen You know, when you see people with varicose veins, when you're on painkillers long term, it actually makes you get varicose veins. It makes your skin thin, and then you can then get.
I don't have the scientific knowledge to back that up, but I'm just going to say, can we don't mention brand names when we're talking about negatives like that, because we don't want to get sued, and they're not here to defend themselves.
Exactly. But you see, this is the thing, right? Like you said, overnight you can become disabled.
Overnight.
You could just go to a wedding, drink 6 pints,
fall over, bash your head.
Not even that. Your sugar level just jumps up, and you can have an isometric stroke, just like that, if your sugar levels hit over 16 overnight. And this is what I think reform voters are thinking. Oh, he really is not serious about. We can already see there's an insurance-based incentive here. He said that employers will have to do this. So he's already given the game away that they're looking for American companies to come back who left under Cameron to put an insurance-based system into Britain. He's already mentioned it here.
Yeah, and they'll be the same with the NHS as well.
Exactly. So
but we're not getting the policy details, and there's a lot of this. People will but everybody wants to see the welfare system changed, unless they're on it. And as you said, any one of us could be on it at any point for any reason. And a lot of the areas that support reform are some of the poorer areas who do get that welfare support.
Do you remember, Petrie, every summer, what used to come on the radio, which was just bizarre? Every summer there was a wedding in Scotland, and then all of a sudden there's an outbreak of E. coli or salmonella from the guests at a wedding. Do you remember that? It used to be on the radio all the time. Every summer, some wedding up in Scotland, outbreak of salmonella or E. coli from people who went to the wedding. It's that simple. This kind of weather does exactly that. You have a wedding, leave the food out. You're meant to have the food out for no more than 2.5 hours before you have to throw it away. And people will be eating innocently in tents during this hot weather, not realising those sandwiches. My friend, I went to a wedding a couple of years ago. Me and my friend ate the same thing. But what I did before I I had B complex, and I took probiotics. Every time I go out to eat, I take probiotics and I drink kefir. And that way, if the food's out of date, it does nothing to me. But he was ill for 2 weeks. I ate the same food as him, and he was 2 weeks off work because he ate that sandwich. So that's what I mean. People need to wake up and see this is all about reform finding grievances. And they don't want to be scrutinised about their expenses. And people make Petrie, from when you was on the station what ends with LMC, I used to ring you then. you know, the same people, if it was Cameron took $5 million, they would say he's a con man, he needs to resign. Because Farage is, fanning the same grievances with Trump. Oh, he's all right. I think he has not got the backing of the civil servants. No civil servant will work for reform, I can tell you that now.
No, it's an interesting thing. Nobody minds him. It's not about him getting the money. It's about him declaring it, and that's where he's made that mistake. And of course, we have to say the inquiry now is back up and running. And I do think this is a distraction technique, and I think much of it is. And it's interesting the way you put it, that they don't want us looking at the benefits that he gets from donors, so he'll attack the benefits that we get. Good to talk to you, Joe. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to go because I'm late to a break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And we are talking about reforms proposals for the welfare system. And whilst we all agree the welfare system does need reforming, is this the way to do it? And a lot of it is to do with stopping foreign nationals from getting, including European nationals, from getting any recourse to public funds in this way, and also changing PIP to be the most to be the people who they believe are the most deserving, so people with minor ailments, they're saying, such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, all kind of lumped together. And we all know there's a scale, right, of anxiety. There's a scale of depression, and there's a scale of neurodiversity, and a scale of ADHD. And you know, while some people probably can work, others won't be able to. So it'll be judged as to how many people. We all, you know, perhaps we all think that millions and millions of people are faking it, and maybe not as many are. We'll find out. But there definitely are people faking. I'm not that naive. But do you think this is a good idea? This welfare to work scheme, I've heard 100 times before, it's always just melted quietly away when the costs of running it become apparent. This time, maybe different, who knows? So let's talk to Paul now, who's in Bolton. Paul, good morning.
Hi, you okay, Petrie?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad, but disappointed to see a news story like this. But interestingly, you just said we'll soon find out, but I don't think we'll ever find out, because I think we've reached peak reform now and peak Nigel Farage, and I think this is his Theresa May moment, actually. Do you know, when she announced plans for social care back in 2017? Yeah. And then lost the majority a few weeks later. And I think this is
because she called a general election, didn't she?
Well, she called the general election, but then announced the social care plans during the campaign, and a lot of it was going to affect elderly people. So I think there's a line, and I think Reform have badly judged this, you know. I really do, because they're forgetting that there's a lot of Nigel Farage's constituents alone who are on PIP. Do you know what I mean? So it's interesting he didn't announce it before the election, isn't it?
Yeah, that is interesting that it wasn't mentioned before the Clacton by-election. That's the point that Joe was making as well, because there's a lot of the people who are Reform supporters are disgruntled. They're unhappy. They may well be working, but also on benefits. They may be on PIP. They may be, you know, if you look at the demographics, and it's interesting that Reform have said they're going to go for this, because I wonder how many of their own electorate that they'll be affecting by this.
I don't know whether you've ever seen... about 10 years ago, there was a documentary on television about a place called Jaywick, which is in Clacton, and that's...
is that in Clacton?
That's his constituency, Jaywick. So you've seen the people and the lives they live in Jaywick. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know whether they're the kind of people who vote for him, but it's strange, because often they are the kind of people that vote for Nigel Farage.
But those are the kind of people that he's talking about with this welfare to work. I mean, and having seen that programme, how are you going to get those people to go out to work? Many of them have got really complex issues.
Well, this is the thing. It's not... there might be an argument in trying to get more people to work. Of course there is. But it's about working with people. I mean, I did like it when Wes Streeting, I think it was Wes Streeting that said it a while ago, when he said, you'll be able to try a job to see if it works for you. Now, if you don't work in the job for whatever reason, you can go back to your benefits, because that's often the fear. Coming off the benefits.
Yeah, it's the cliff edge. I've said it for years. It's the cliff edge, that there needs to be a much more, you know, that people then have to go through everything again to get their benefits back. There should be a 6-month period or a year period where all of your benefits stand. You don't get them, but if you suddenly lose your job, then you don't have to go through all that waiting, all that rigmarole, because that is a bar to getting people to go to work. Because benefits are regular and they're safe.
Well, that's the thing. It's a safety net for some people. It's not that they don't want to.
No, they're too scared to.
It's funnily enough, I was going to say at the start of the call, it's funnily enough you had that, Joe, on, because I do actually hear him ring up to